It reduces the stress on the people, and it keeps them actively working on what they're good at, which is picking fruit, cleaning fruit, packing fruit.
A look at how farm workers are interacting with ag tech. That's next on Marketplace. We'll be back with All Things Considered at 7 p.m. tonight. It's a stormy Friday evening. We've had some pretty severe thunderstorms moving through our area tonight. Be aware of that. They could be pretty windy at times. We're going to see more of that through tonight. Temperatures in the upper 60s tonight. For tomorrow in our area, we're looking at more rain, more thunderstorms possible, with highs in the upper 70s. Stick around. It's WNYC on a Friday at 6:30.
WNYC is supported by Neon, presenting The Life of Chuck, from Stephen King, author of The Shawshank Redemption and Stand By Me. The Life of Chuck stars Tom Hiddleston and is now playing in theaters.
If you believe democracy requires a free press, your station is WNYC, 93.9 FM and AM 820, NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Marketplace is supported by Total Wine and more, helping shoppers love what they find this summer season at TotalWine.com. Drink responsibly. B21.
Yes, it's a Friday jobs day, but that might not be the most important thing that happened this economic week. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Progressive. Progressive Commercial Insurance protects small businesses from retailers to tradespeople. Progressive covers a variety of business needs with a range of coverages. More at progressivecommercial.com. And by Raymond James, a firm focused on transforming lives, businesses, and communities through tailored wealth management, banking, and capital markets solutions. Disclosures at raymondjames.com. And by the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to raising awareness and accelerating action on America's fiscal challenges to build a brighter economic future for the next generation. Learn more at pgpf.org.
In Los Angeles, I'm Kai Rizdal. It is Friday today. This one is the 6th of June. Good as always to have you along, everybody. I could do a little throat clearing here, remind you of the economic happenings of the week, and then start things off, or we could just start. Anna Swanson is at the New York Times. Heather Long is the brand new chief economist at Navy Federal Credit Union. Hey, you two.
Hi, Kai.
Hi, Kai.
Heather Long, we start with you. First of all, congratulations on the new gig. We're so glad you can keep coming on the program and making us smart about stuff. Here is my question to you. 139,000 new jobs this last month. Unemployment rate held steady. So far, so good, right? What are we worried about?
Well, you're right. It's pretty good, but with a side dish of caution. I know, I feel like I'm always the downer. But look, I would say I saw the number and my first reaction was, okay, no imminent recession. Still, we have over 159 million Americans employed and getting their paychecks every week. That's really good news. That's keeping the economy humming. But we also saw 80% of those 139,000 job gains came from just two sectors, and that was healthcare and hospitality, leisure and hospitality, basically hospitals and restaurants. And while those are great jobs, that's not a very dynamic economy when you don't have a lot of sectors growing. And temporary help was down, professional and business, white-collar jobs are negative, manufacturing was negative, even retail shed jobs in May. So I think when you start looking through the details of the report, and of course the federal government shed jobs, it doesn't look quite as strong. And that's where I'm I've been calling this the abundance of caution economy.
All right, fair enough. Anna Swanson, I'm going to give you a break and not ask you about trade until the second question that you're going to get in this afternoon's program, because I know you're sick and tired of that. But I do want to talk about the vibes here for a minute, because we've been waiting for the hard data to catch up to the vibes. The vibes are, the hard data, sort of. Heather kind of alluded to maybe it's starting to change. What do you think?
Yeah. So I mean, I think Heather is right. The economy looks pretty strong overall, but there are, some signs of turbulence in there. We did have significant revisions to the numbers that came out in March and April. And I will actually bring it back to trade because I think that you did see signs actually that, tariffs are deterring hiring in parts of the economy that depend on trade. That jobs were lost in manufacturing and retail. Obviously, we saw this kind of surge that had happened earlier in the year in transportation and warehousing as companies were stockpiling ahead of the tariffs fade off. And then you also saw these big losses in machinery, so companies that are making machineries for other factories, which is kind of worrying. So, job growth is just not very broad-based. You had as many industries cutting jobs as adding them. And so yes, things are very strong overall, but it does hint at kind of this uncertainty that maybe businesses are starting to hold off on some big decisions due to all the unknowns over tariffs and other policies.
Heather, one takes the pronouncements by the President of the United States on the economy at one's own peril, and today he reverted to form and went after Jay Powell, telling him to cut rates a full point and add some rocket fuel to this economy, and there is no inflation. And the fact of the matter is there is inflation. We need to have some inflation, and it would be a very bad thing right now if the Fed went ahead and cut rates real hard. And I guess the question is, the market knows what's going on, the president doesn't. What are we supposed to make of that?
Well, right now, the good news is everyone seems to be ignoring the president's comments about the Fed. I thought it was amusing.
Including Jay Powell, probably, right? I mean,
yeah. It was probably a good sign for the Fed chairman that the president didn't actually use the name Powell in these tweets. He kept saying he. So that's where we're at. I think next week, 2 weeks from now, we'll hear from Chair Powell again. And right now, it's just on hold, and that's probably a good
That's
thing.
where we're going to stay. Yeah. All right. So, Anna Swanson, the hardest and busiest person probably on the trade and economics beat in all of economic journalism. Here's what I want to know. The President of the United States has ruined your weekend because his cabinet secretaries, Secretary Lutnick, Secretary Bessent, are going to go over to London and talk with the Chinese about trade. Here is my question. Are we actually negotiating, or do they just want to look like they're negotiating? And I ask this because of the thing that they have actually said out loud, which is we want to strategically decouple from China. We don't want to be as dependent on them. What do you suppose is going on behind closed doors?
So yeah, there will be more trade talks in London in London on Monday. And you're right. I think most of the negotiations so far seem to have just kind of focused on reversing the situation that they have immediately landed themselves in, with high tariffs on both sides, with China putting these curbs on minerals that has really scared like automakers and defense industries in the United States because they need those minerals. So most of the negotiations so far seem to have focused on just sort of getting things back to stable. But I mean, the Trump administration is really concerned about unbalanced trade with China. It just remains to be seen if they can actually convince the Chinese to do anything about that.
Right.
So, they might be talking about purchases, but we had, big purchases in the trade deal struck in Trump's first term. China didn't make them. What China really wants to buy, like advanced chips, we don't particularly want to sell them. It's been much harder and even impossible to convince the Chinese to make real changes to the structure of its economy. You could see some low-hanging fruit with an ultimate deal, China policing more fentanyl shipments or buying some more Boeing airplanes. But there's a reason this is a very difficult, situation between the U.S. and China that has lasted a long time.
Right. Heather, last question to you. You got about 45 seconds to do it once I get it out of my mouth. How worried are you about, and we talked about this on the program earlier this week, the proposed restructuring of some of the economic statistical agencies, the BLS, into the Department of the the Bureau of the Census, and generally the integrity of our statistical system?
Yeah, that's a great one. I don't know. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd put myself at a 7 or 8, pretty high worry level. Yeah. And I was thinking about it. It's kind of like if you're driving a car and the rear view mirror falls off. You can still drive the car, but with a lot less visibility, right? Yeah. And that's kind of what's happening with our government statistics. Do I still trust them? Yes. Do a lot of good people still there putting these out? But we're going to have less visibility to the amazing regions of this country, right? There's just fewer offices collecting, fewer resources going towards this. And that makes us weaker overall. We don't have that visibility we want into this economy.
Heather Long is chief economist at Navy Federal Credit Union. Anna Swanson is at the New York Times. Thanks, you two.
Thanks, Guy.
Thanks, Guy.
Have a nice weekend. Wall Street today, that just a bit better than expected jobs report had traders looking for reasons to buy. So they did. We will have the numbers. No, we'll have the details when we do the numbers. As Heather was just saying a minute ago, there are some things to like in this jobs report, and there are some things to be worried about. On the, maybe we should worry about this side, the labor force participation rate. In layman's terms, that's a percentage of Americans either working or actively looking for work. It dropped to 62.4% in May, well off the highs of the past couple of years. Just how worried ought we be? Here's Marketplace's Matt Levin.
Sometimes there are positive reasons people leave the labor force. Older workers finally reaching a planned retirement, younger workers going back to school for an advanced degree, your crypto-loving cousin cashing out his Bitcoin to try van life for a few months. But economist Corey Staley at Indeed says lately, the reasons aren't so positive.
There are some evidence that maybe people are saying it's taking me so long to find a job. What am I doing, right? Like I'm going to stop, right?
About 6 million people last month wanted a job but weren't in the labor force. 300,000 more frustrated people than in April. Staley says in certain industries like tech, dwindling job openings may be keeping potential workers on the sidelines.
So what we see in the Indeed job postings data is that as of the end of May, that software development job postings were about 40% below where they were in February 2020.
Much of the drop in the May labor force participation was driven by workers aged 24 or younger. Economist Preston Moy at Employ America says that's troubling, but not panic-inducing.
I would say it's a warning sign for the labor market. If we saw a very large decline in the labor force participation rate for people aged 25 to 54, that would be a really, really bad sign for the labor market.
The prime age labor force participation rate did drop slightly in May, but overall is still historically pretty high. I'm Matt Levin for Marketplace.
You think about $800 in the grand scheme of the bilateral trade relationship between the United States and China, you might not think it's that big a deal. You might even think it's de minimis, which, dad joke aside, is an actual real thing. There's a whole lot of tension in the Sino-American